You're listening to the first in a series of ABO conference podcasts. This year's conference is staged at the ICC Belfast and runs from the 23rd to the 25th of January 2019. We'll be bringing you edited highlights, interviews and discussions exploring this year's conference theme, Crossing Borders. You can follow events live on the ABO Twitter account at AB Orchestras or via the ABO conference app. Alternatively, visit abo.org.uk for further information. In this preview podcast recorded in mid-January, you'll hear from some of the people behind this year's conference, including Ulster Orchestra Managing Director Richard Wigley and ABO Director Mark Pemberton.
The ABO conference, we have it every year, moves around the country, and this year we'll be delighted to be returning to Belfast, which is a city we haven't been to for 20 years.
Okay, my name's Dr. Katie Radford. I am Vice Chair of the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. I grew up in Belfast in the 1960s and 70s, and at that time it was a very, very different environment. One of the things that really marked Belfast for me at that time as a young person growing up here was the opportunity to make music with people I may not otherwise have met. It was quite a segregated place when I was growing up, more so than it is now. And the orchestras that I belonged to, or the bands that I played in, or the opportunities through the City of Belfast School of Music to grow musically and to appreciate as well as to perform and to hear was something that was really special. And it brought together people from a very, very, very diverse background. Belfast is a place that has changed dramatically over the last 20, 30 years, and it's a place that is now one of the most popular short break tourism spaces in Europe. Resources and facilities here, particularly for artists and for people who want to appreciate visual performance arts, is absolutely second to none. We have some wonderful resources here and some truly amazing artists. And the audiences are warm and welcoming and want the new as well as the old. So it's a great place to develop your practice, and it's a great place to enjoy other people's practice.
Richard Wigley. Yeah, the city feels very much like a young city, so a lot of young people, a lot of good stuff happening in and around the city that keeps them happy and makes them happy, and a thriving tourist industry now around both the Titanic experience, and which is one of the top European experiences, and of course Game of Thrones, which is filmed here and is quite a tourist trap. So there's a lot of things going on in the city at the moment that will surprise and delight people.
At the moment in Northern Ireland, we have a very strong, we have a very able, we have a growing arts sector, and the challenges, as in other parts of of Europe, in Great Britain and Ireland throughout, is funding. We are very, very as the Arts Council is constantly advocating for more support for artists, for their development, for the opportunities for them to perform, and for excellence to be raised, as well as community, within a profession, within a community setting. And simply, the resources that are required for that, for the continuation of that, are limited, and hard choices are having to be made by performers, by audiences, and by funders alike.
And Belfast was actually a remarkably prescient choice because we selected it before we had the referendum on leaving the EU back in 2016. So we find ourselves in the remarkable position of having a venue, a location that's particularly apt for our theme of crossing borders.
Well, the one that's the obvious topic for us is how Northern Ireland is going to fare with Brexit. It's been in the news a lot because of the issue of the border. And we're particularly conscious of the strides that have been made within Northern Ireland in the last 20 years, and most of it with a lot of, billions of euros from the European Union as part of the peace process. So it's a particularly difficult time for us. So we are really interested in what everybody's point of view is regarding Brexit and how we manage either no deal, some deal, or return to a referendum.
While we are looking at that in a couple of sessions, we're more interested in virtual borders that exist within cities themselves, within communities, and particularly in relation to orchestras and classical music, those barriers that prevent engagement with the work that our members do. So how do we cross those boundaries and reach people who are not necessarily accessing the work that we're currently doing?
I'm Matt Parkin, and I'm one of the founders of a company called Stagecast, and I'm also head of digital at the Royal College of Music. Stagecast is a digital service company. We do live stream production, but also build digital concert halls and platforms for people. We're going to be talking about live streaming and really the state of that and where the business case is at this point on. It's 10 years this weekend, I think, since the Berlin Philharmonic launched their digital concert hall. So that is a decade now of orchestral streaming done not just as a brand and marketing exercise, but actually as a really central part of their kind of artistic activity. So it's a good chance to review how that might work for other orchestras, I think. We've got some great contributors from different parts of the world who are probably at different stages of their journey with live streaming. So we've got experts from Vienna State Opera and Detroit Symphony who've been doing live streaming on their own platforms for several years and to really interesting strategic effects as well. In the case of Detroit, it was part of a kind of reinvigoration of the whole orchestra and really significantly increasing ticket sales in their concert hall, and live stream was part of that. In the case of Vienna, all sorts of different digital initiatives that have flown from that, and they're real experts. And then we're also joined by Millicent Jones from the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, who did their first live streams, I think just a year, 18 months ago, and a series of 4 there to hear what their experience has been of it and what the audience engagement was arising from it. This is an incredibly exciting time for classical music and orchestral music, where you can relatively cost-effectively reach global audiences with music performances of the quality that you would expect to hear in the concert hall and really convey that in a meaningful way. So it's an exciting time. I hope people are inspired. Secondly, I hope they realise it's more achievable and feasible than perhaps they feared it was to deliver this kind of quality of live stream. And thirdly, I hope they go away thinking how this can be built into their organisation's future success.
We're also interested in looking at the internal borders that exist within orchestras, particularly around the relationship between manager and musician, where there has tended to be an us and them culture. So we are devoting quite a chunk of time to how we demolish that barrier that exists, and making sure that all the people who work within our orchestras are pursuing the same goal and are building resilience in what remain pretty challenging times.
I am Jo Johnson, Senior Marketing Manager at the London Symphony Orchestra, and I'm part of this year's Find Your Way cohort. Find Your Way is a year-long training course run by the ABO. We're here to present a 90-minute session on our thoughts about the topic of crossing borders and what that means to us as a group. The 6 of us have been talking a lot about what it was that we wanted to do in our session, and we were given a very open brief. Here's 90 minutes, the topic is crossing borders, go. The difficulty has been in getting the 6 of us to, we're all from very different orchestras, and one of them, us is a musician, and CBSO, Halle, Royal Scottish National Orchestra, Scottish Ensemble and the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. Our musician Jo is from the Scottish Ensemble, and she also has a freelance career as a teacher and educator. So we're all quite different. I am the only marketer, Jo's the only musician. The other 4 are orchestra managers or tour managers, personnel managers. So we're coming from different directions, and we've had to get together, work out what our group approaches to this topic and how we're going to present it. So this is the challenge. What we're hoping to do in our session is bring forth some thoughts that we've been having about individuals in the role of our orchestras, which are group beasts, as we are, the six of us, and how that plays out as a dynamic between the group and the individual, and what we think is where we are missing out on some strengths. The borders that we're crossing are those between the barriers between our, let's say, our triumvirate of musician, audience and administration. I have been exploring how we treat our musicians as stars or not, or how the audience views the orchestra as a set of individuals or as a mass, and how they identify with those different setups. And my thinking goes along the lines of that perhaps we ought to revitalise our PR, the way we do our PR and comms, so that we're treating our orchestra players, individuals, as the chief asset that we have.
So my name's William Norris. I'm Managing Director of South Bank Sinfonia. For the conference, I'm teaming up with Sophie Lewis and Kath Arledge from National Children's Orchestra and Matthew Swan from City London Sinfonia. And we had the idea of a session where we could invite people to just dream up their perfect orchestra. And we thought it'd be nice to have an environment where we're not limited by what we already have, and to dream big and not be constrained by too many things. I've been thinking about how many constraints there are on what you can actually achieve with a pre-existing organisation, because so much of it, your day-to-day life, ends up being about just keeping it going, keeping musicians in employment, and it's very hard to sometimes to step back and think, actually, is this really the way to be doing this? So that's what kind of led to this idea. But we have had some ideas, but we're going to make it very interactive. So really, each of us will have a provocation, but then it'd be down to the delegates to work together to come up with their dream orchestra. The four of us have divvied them up according to what we're all passionate about. Mine will not be a surprise to you, will be about marketing and audiences. But we've also got something about excellence and creativity, relevance and social change, and physical space.
Every single session on the Friday morning is to do with musicians. It is to do with what role the musician has in future, as an educator, as a performer, how they deal with future retirement, how they can reinvent themselves as they run through the challenges of sustaining a career as a musician. We'll hear from Raphael Pyaari, who is the outgoing music director of the Ulster Orchestra, and that there will be breaking news at the conference of his replacement. We have polemicist and philosopher Sir Roger Scruton, who, defending elitism, defending what it means to be an elitist organisation, saying that orchestras should not apologise for the pursuit of excellence. We are family. I've always marvelled at the ingenuity, commitment, and devotion of our members, and their refusal to give in to those sorts of general prejudicial attitudes that, well, aren't orchestras just yesterday's news, a sunset industry? Isn't it time to accept the inevitable and go away? No, we're definitely here to stay.
I would love people to come here, experience as much as they can, the diversity of what can be experienced here, and to say, you know what, I need to come back and I need to bring at least another 3 people here with me. Whether or not that's part of the environment, whether it's looking and hearing the sounds resonating up in the hills or down by the beaches, or right in the city centre, the urban soundscapes that we have here. It's really a phenomenal space to be. And if you want to have if you want to learn about a really special part of this part of the world, there's no better place to come than Belfast.
You've been listening to the 2019 ABO Conference Podcast. Follow at ABO Orchestras on Twitter for the latest updates. Discover more information about the conference by visiting abo.org.uk or by downloading the ABO Conference app. My name is John Jacob. Music was Borderless by Syrian composer Mutaz Arian and performed by the Carrion Wind Quintet. This was a thoroughly good podcast for the Association of British Orchestras.